Hey everybody, it's Dylan with One Hard Thing a Day, and today I wanted to talk to you about psychological change. So much of what we do in One Hard Thing a Day is about changing our psychology, changing our thought processes so that we can become the people that we want to be and even become those people that we never dreamt we could be. Now, this process happens through that psychological change, so I wanted to go a little bit deeper into those topics. So we're going to be covering number one, what is psychological change? Number two, a few examples of psychological change. Three, the effects of psychological change. Four, how One Hard Thing a Day can help you in this psychological change, and also a few other resources that you can seek out if you're serious about making positive changes in your life and want additional support on top of what we're offering here at One Hard Thing a Day. So let's get to it. All right, number one is, what is psychological change? So psychological change is altering processes within our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors. It involves shifting our perspectives, our beliefs, our habits, our expectations sometimes in order to achieve a desired outcome. Psychological change often occurs through a lot of different means. Obviously, that's a lot of what we do in therapy. It can happen through some of these tools that we're applying in One Hard Thing a Day, but even just through self-reflection, meditation, things like that, or life events. A big life event can change our perspective, change our psychology quite a bit. Entering into a serious long-term relationship or having children, or the loss of a loved one, a change in careers, all of those things can have a psychological change over time or sometimes very rapidly. So that brings us to our second point. I wanted to give you a few examples of what psychological change would be. So it can be something pretty straightforward as learning a new skill or gaining some more knowledge. I would certainly categorize One Hard Thing a Day as really focusing on that point, where we talk a lot about building new skills. This whole video is informational. It's to give you an education and some information that you can use and apply in your life to better meet your goals. Better move through those stages of change that we talked about in another video. I'll link it up here if you're interested in watching it. It was pretty good. All of that can lead to psychological change. The next one is changing a belief or an attitude. Oftentimes these ones are harder to change. Gaining a new skill or knowledge is a simple application of our effort. Those beliefs or those attitudes are often a little bit more ingrained. Sometimes they're things that we brought with us through childhood, or beliefs about the world or religion or things like that shaped how we saw the world. And then we get a new piece of information and we've got to adjust to that information. Changing that attitude about that particular topic or about that about a person or whatever. Another big example of psychological change is coping with a traumatic event. So this can be due to an accident or a weather event or war, or something a lot more personal with any sort of abuse or things like that. These are hard things that unfortunately happen, and dealing with them and coping with them and learning to make the world safe again and finding our place within the world can often be difficult, and it tends to lead to a change in our thoughts and our emotions, change in our beliefs. Another one that we talk about, another example of psychological change that we talk a lot about here, is developing a new habit. I like the example of making the bed in the morning. That simple act of pulling up the covers and getting something set straight right first thing in the morning changes our psychology throughout the rest of the day. Getting that positive thing done, improving our space right off the bat at the beginning of the day, can be really helpful throughout the rest of the day. Another example of psychological change is seeking therapy. People come to therapy for a myriad of reasons. Um, so when we come to therapy, we are seeking a different perspective. We're seeking some knowledge, some information that we can hopefully use to better improve our own perspectives, our own insights, and over time change those thoughts, those emotions, and behaviors to be more helpful and more healthy. Another big one, and this is one that we'll end on as far as examples go, but overcoming an addiction. There are so many things nowadays that vie for our attention. They're fighting for our attention, and it can be very easy to fall into a pattern of addiction, whether it's to a substance or to our phones, or to shopping or gambling or whatever it is. We get into these patterns where we depend on this external source for our peace and our comfort, and overcoming that and learning those healthy patterns and building a healthy lifestyle can be really, really hard when we're faced with that addictive pattern. Our psychological changes are constantly evolving, and change is a very natural part of our growth and our process through life. From the day we were born to the day we die, we're hopefully going through continual changes. Typically, if we're not changing, that lends its own sort of issues. So all of this is natural and expected, and sometimes it's difficult. And so that kind of brings us to that next step, which are what are the psychological effects of change. We talk a lot about all the positives of change, but we also try to balance that out by talking about how difficult change can be. That's why we set the expectation where it feels like it's really low, like just do this one hard thing. Even if it's small, even if it feels like it's insignificant, it's where you're at, because there are psychological effects to change. As we're going through that change process, there can be a lot of stress and anxiety. Change is stressful, particularly when that change is forced upon us. It's unexpected and unwanted. Losing a job or having to move unexpectedly, or again, a loss of a loved one. That requires a change in our process, a change in how we go through life, and that can cause feelings of anxiety, worry, and uncertainty about the future. The next one is loss and grief. Sometimes change brings a sense of loss, whether it's losing a job or ending a relationship or moving cities. Some of those things can be really, really positive and helpful, but there's still that loss that comes with it. I'm losing that thing that, maybe I depended on that for a long time and now it's gone. And maybe I'm better for it in the long run, but in the short term, I'm sad, I miss it. Or there were good things about it. And I'm sad to lose those good things, even if I'm also losing those bad things. So that can lead to feelings of grief and sadness and even depression. A more positive effect of change is adaptation and resilience. As we go through change, as we go through difficulty, as we're up against a challenge, we must learn to adapt. We must learn to get through that moment. And early on, maybe that adaptation feels like survival. We're just fighting. I've certainly had times where I'm just fighting. I'm not living, I'm just surviving. And I'm just trying to get through those moments and get to that stability again. But as I go through that process, as I go through that change, that resilience builds. And suddenly I find myself more capable to face that next challenge. Oftentimes a bigger challenge, because it always seems like you beat one dragon, there's always a bigger one waiting for you around the corner. But we're ready for it. We're stronger for it. We're stronger because we go through difficult events. Going back and talking about some of those other things that facilitate change. A traumatic event, or overcoming an addiction, or dealing with a physical or mental health issue. All of those things, as we learn to adapt and overcome them, we build that resilience. Another great effect of psychological change is that self-discovery. We learn to recognize parts of ourselves. We learn our values, our goals, what's important to us through this process of change. So often with loss or grief or anger, that's informative of what's important to us. What mattered to us maybe in a previous stage of our lives, maybe it doesn't matter as much now as we've learned to adapt, and maybe it still does matter a lot. But we learn those pieces about ourselves, and we make changes to align our behaviors with our aspirations. So many times we're stuck in we're stuck in a pattern where we're doing this thing, but we actually don't like that we're doing it. Sometimes I get stuck, scrolling through videos and realize I've wasted an hour of my day that didn't do anything for me. Maybe I got a little bit of entertainment, a laugh or two, or got a cool piece of knowledge, but most of the time it was wasted time because I wasn't actually engaging with it. It was just mindless. So that self-discovery helps us prioritize those things that are important to us. Another benefit of psychological change is increased creativity. Change can inspire creativity and innovation. I think most innovation comes from something not working or not working as well as it could be, and so someone finds a solution, and that solution is part of that change process. And so we think outside the box, we come up with a solution to our problem, and we solve it. And then lastly, there's a sense of accomplishment that comes with change. As we overcome and we defeat one of those dragons, there's some satisfaction there. Again, sometimes there are just hard events that happen in our lives that it's hard to draw anything happy from them. But there can still be that sense of, I made it to the other side, and maybe it's not as pretty as I hoped, or maybe it is. Maybe it worked out really well, and I'm actually in a much better place. But either way, we can have that sense of accomplishment. It increases our self-confidence, particularly if that change was something challenging. The next thing we're going to talk about is how one hard thing a day can help you in making those positive changes. One hard thing a day is a place of encouragement. We're really hoping and working to build. We already have a really cool community. It's tiny. It's so small right now, but we already love it. And I've already been inspired by many of the people that jump in and comment, or family members or friends commenting on the videos. It really excites me because I've seen a positive impact already. So we hope to continue to build that community of support and encouragement through that change process. Another big piece of one hard thing a day is, this video right here, we hope to educate you. We both have that background in therapy, and we bring that in here to give you that knowledge and hopefully get you on the right foot in that change process and know what you need to know in order to be successful with it. Another big one is, in here we talk about goal setting, setting appropriate goals for ourselves. So that's another one hard thing a day can help you, is setting goals that are achievable. Setting goals that you can see the progress and change that you're making. Again, even if it's small, even if it takes a while to get that momentum going, we accept that change, and we expect that change. We expect it to take time. And I just want to summarize everything we talked about, but first I want to invite you to like and subscribe. Please comment something that stood out to you, or where you're at in your own change process, and some of the effects that you're seeing. Maybe you're stuck in that point where it feels challenging, it's causing that stress and that anxiety, less so than it is anything exciting. It's important to note that change is hard. It's not all positive, it's not all easy in the short term, but here at One Hard Thing a Day, we truly believe that lifelong change is always going to take us to a better place. We're always going to be constantly improving our own environment and the environment for those around us when we're in that change mindset. Going back and summarizing, psychological change is the process of altering our thoughts and our emotions and our behaviors to achieve our desired outcome. this comes through gaining new skills and knowledge, challenging and changing our beliefs or attitudes when they're no longer serving us, or we find that they're maybe hurtful or just not helpful to us. Another example is dealing with trauma, developing new habit, recovering from an addiction. All of those things are examples of where that psychological change can happen. Some of the effects are, again, early on in the process, or even throughout the process, there can be that stress and anxiety of stretching ourselves. It's uncomfortable. We can experience that loss and grief, but eventually we are hoping to achieve that adaptation and that resilience, that self-discovery, and that brings about that increased sense of creativity, finding new solutions to our problems that were maybe out of the box or unexpected, and then that sense of accomplishment, being able to look at the progress we've made so far, or look back at where we were and where we are now, and say, you know what, I made it. Maybe it was messy, maybe it wasn't pretty, maybe I aced it and I just did awesome from beginning to end, and it never was really a challenge. I mean, I always hope the change goes that well. It doesn't go that well for me ever, but that's okay, because this is all part of the process. And then again, just check back in here. We're really working hard to encourage you, and encourage ourselves to stay in that growth mindset. Keep striving to get that much further down our path of growth and change. So I hope you found this helpful, and we'll catch you tomorrow.